What's going on, everybody? Keith Niebuhr with Gators Online. We got a great show today. We got a one-on-one interview with one of my favorite all-time Gators. I actually had the pleasure of covering Chris Doering back when he played receiver for the Gators. We were both students at the University of Florida at the same time, and now he is a college football analyst for ESPN and the SEC Network. He does an outstanding job. He's all over our TVs every week, and Chris just he's one of the better guys in our business. He's always got a time to talk Florida Gators football with me. So, Chris, let me get you in here. Good to have you, man. Great to see you again.
It's good to be with you. It's funny as you're talking about our friendship over these decades, man. I just hard to believe it's been as long as it's been, but it's awesome to have been able to stay in touch and to reminisce about some of those great times in the 90s when we were in school and enjoying some of the heights of the success of the program.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, and I don't know why you would know, Chris is the star here, not me, but back when Chris caught his first pass for the Gators, I believe it was at Tennessee on the road, rainy game, I was there, but I was also there on the sideline at the end of the game in Lexington back in 1993 when Chris obviously had his catch, which immortalized him in Gators lore. Chris, let's just get right into this. Everybody wants to know about this season and what you think about the Florida Gators and their potential. So let's begin with DJ Lagway, the young, talented Florida quarterback. You know, from your perspective as a guy who played with arguably the best passing quarterback in Gators history, Danny Wuerffel, what impresses you most about DJ Lagway?
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up there. You know, I know you weren't necessarily comparing it to Danny Wuerffel, and their games are very different in a lot of ways. But I think that the commonality between the two, and really one of the best compliments you can give a quarterback is how they impact the other 10 guys in that huddle. I think Danny Wuerffel elevated the play of the rest of us when he walked into that huddle, and I think DJ Lagway has had that same impact. And when I say the huddle, not only the huddle on the field, but the impact on the team in general. You know, as a freshman coming in, having that sort of respect from older teammates, from guys falling in line in terms of, you know, maybe being a little more disciplined with what they're doing throughout the week, the way that they've hit the game plans and studying a little bit more. It really feels like, you know, that DJ Lagway is almost like a Pied Piper, that everybody kind of follows him. And even, you know, the transfer portal guys want to come to Gainesville like J. Michael Sturdivant or the young players like Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown III. Like, these guys all want to come be a part of this program. I think it's largely to play with DJ Lagway.
Okay, so he's had an interesting offseason, to say the least. He was not able to throw during spring practice for what Billy Napier labeled as a lower body / shoulder injury, tongue twister there. Then just as he was sort of getting back to getting that arm strength back to where it needed to be, he sustained a calf injury the week before fall practice or preseason practice started. So, Chris, having played the game, having been, seeing guys injured and not injured, and you've had injuries too, what are your biggest concerns about the time lost for DJ? What would you say?
You nailed it right there. It's not necessarily. I mean, I'm obviously concerned about his durability and ability to be on the field, right? Where they say the best ability is availability. So I think Florida's ceiling and floor are very wide, given him on the field versus not able to play. But I do think that the time that has been missed, whether we're talking about practices in the spring or more importantly, talking about the time that these guys have together in the offseason. You were around. I mean, you remember when Shane and then Danny would take all of us out there on the practice field on his own, and we'd be working through one-on-ones and 7-on-7 stuff. I know that there's even more time with coaches now with the OTAs that are allowed, but I do think that you'll never get an opportunity to get those reps back. They're very important reps in the offseason, especially when you're talking about having all the new receivers, whether it's J. Michael Sturdivant or the two freshmen I just talked about, or even, getting Trey Wilson back. I mean, it's almost like a new player there after he only played 4 games last year, and those two didn't have a ton of reps together. So I think that's what I want to see. Is there any sort of rust between Lagway and his receivers? Is there a lack of either communication, like nonverbal communication? Do they have a good feel for one another? Those are the things that you develop when you get a chance to play a lot in the offseason together. You just hadn't been able to have that time, Keith.
Okay. Is this a guy? I mean, look, I'm putting a lot of pressure on you here, but you've been doing this a long time. You've been around some of the greats of the game. Is this a guy that a year from now we're going to be saying this is someone we think is going to end up in New York for the Heisman ceremony, or is it still too soon to know? Is it 12 touchdowns last year, 9 interceptions, 59% completion percentage, still young, but boy, he did a lot of good things. What's your take on that, Chris?
Yeah, he's done a lot of good things. And again, I go back to what I talked about before, how he's raised the play of those around him. In order to win the Heisman Trophy, you gotta win some football games. I think Tim Tebow winning the Heisman on an 8-win team is not the norm. So, Florida's going to need to be in the playoff hunt. They're going to need to win, some big time games, have that signature Heisman moment for DJ. But yeah, I think he's perfectly capable of it. I mean, wasn't that the expectation when you sign a 5-star, Gatorade Player of the Year? You're expecting that he's not only going to come in and win games, but give you a chance to have some individual awards as well. So I do think that's out there, but you got to be healthy and you got to win some games.
You study rosters all across the SEC and probably all of college football. Is the Florida roster getting closer or on par yet with the Georgias and Alabamas and Texases, or is it still sort of, getting there, but maybe not there yet? Or do we not know?
Yeah, this is the most talented team that Billy Napier's had. Obviously, it's probably one of the most talented teams that they've had, maybe even dating back to some of the Will Muschamp teams. But I think the thing that stood out to me the most, first spring practice I went to in March, Keith, the lines of scrimmage. The offensive and defensive lines looked more like Alabama and Georgia offensive lines. Certainly have closed the gap considerably between those top-tier programs and what we've had here in the past. So I do think that that's going to be the biggest differentiator. And let's say that DJ's not 100%. The ability to line up and run the football, something I think a lot of people forget about. Billy Napier's offenses are predicated on running the football first. You can see that with the accumulation of talent in the running back room. And you can also see it with the number of tight ends that are utilized. There's a ton of 12 and even 13 personnel that this staff likes to use. So I think it's a great illustration of just how important Billy Napier feels like the offensive line and the running game as a whole is.
All right, early in your career in Gainesville, you had Willie Jackson, also a PK Young like you, playing with you. Harrison Houston was a very good receiver. I can't remember whether Barber, Terrence
Aubrey Hill, Jack Jackson, all those guys. Man.
Yeah, Alonzo Sullivan, guys that we don't even talk about that were
Trey
good.
Everett.
Good Trey Everett, very fast.
Yeah.
Used to play basketball with him all the time. Not the best basketball player in the world, but a very good football player. But so many good guys. And so when we look at this Florida receiver group right now, Chris, they lost 2 guys that were very productive last year. They were Elijah Badger and Shamir Dike had 81 combined catches. Now, in your era, that wouldn't have been the greatest combination of number, but it's high right now. 81, 2 guys, that's 40, an average of 40 each. Each of them caught almost 20 yards per reception, which is really good. They were good players, man. And DK also was a fantastic special teams player. But when you look at this receiver room right now, as a guy that was an All-American receiver, what do you think of these guys?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Badger and DK, because both of those guys were transfer portal acquisitions. Yeah. And that was on the heels of them going out and getting Ricky Pearsall through the transfer portal. I bring that up because this coaching staff and Coach Napier specifically deserves to get the benefit of the doubt on their evaluation of receivers. They've hit home runs at that position, both through the portal and through the high school signing classes. I think J. Michael Sturdivant, from everything that I've heard and seen, is going to fall right in line with Badger and DK and Pearsall. He's going to be a very productive player. But I also think we forget about Trey Wilson, too. I mean, Trey Wilson is almost like a new guy back again after the injury last year, limited him to only 4 games. So he returns. I'm not sure about when Dallas Wilson will be cleared and healthy, but Vernell Brown's had some great preseason practices and is incredibly explosive. So I really think that this receiver core and largely – the effort in the offseason was to surround DJ Lagway with a lot of talent at the skill position players. They're 5 deep at the running back spot. Tight ends, I think that could be an X factor with what Hayden Hansen can do. But this is a really talented and deep group of wide receivers. And I'm not even mentioning Khalil Jackson, who I think a lot of people forget about, but he is an incredibly steady player coming back from an injury himself. There's just a lot of really good players in that room.
All right, collectively, Chris, I don't even know how I'm going to ask this, but individually, it looks like there's so many good parts. Look at the running backs, the receivers, the offensive line, the quarterback, tight ends, defense. I mean, like every position, there's guys you can say there's some pretty good players here, actually really good players, but you got to figure out how to put it all together. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, what would you like to see more out of this current Florida team in 2025 that maybe you haven't seen a lot of since Billy Napier's been there?
Yeah, I go to this as a guy that played in systems where we utilize 4 and 5 wide receiver sets an awful lot. And maybe this is me even becoming more aware of it because Shane and I end up texting and talking a lot about it. But Florida does not use a ton of 11 personnel. Or 10 personnel. There's very, very little 4 wides and really no 5 wide packages ever. So I think with all the talent you have at the receiver spot, I'd love to see those guys out on the field because I think that's one of the things you mentioned. All the guys that I played with, it was tough for defenses to match up with us. I mean, my senior year, our 5 receivers were Jack Jackson, Riddell Anthony, Ike Hilliard, Jaquez Green, Travis McGriff, and myself. So it's a pick your poison, and you're going to expose somebody when you have that kind of talent out there. So that's kind of what I'd like to see is a little bit more of the 10 personnel and empty personnel.
All right. Last thing from me, and then we'll get into some reader questions, just some rapid fire stuff. And Chris has been gracious with his time, so we're not going to hold him all day. But do you have, and forgive me if I haven't seen this, Chris, have you made a prediction on Florida's season yet? Are you able to, or do we need to watch it on TV?
I've gone on record as I think this is an 8-14 this year. It's a challenging schedule, and I've made a couple predictions on shows throughout the offseason, but I honestly believe Florida wins against Texas at home, and I think they actually beat Georgia this year. I mean, Florida was close last year, even without DJ Lagway in the second half of that game. It was a tied ball game in the fourth quarter. So I think Florida gets 2 big wins there. And then I start going through the rest of the schedule. I think they probably lose to LSU and Baton Rouge. I think they probably lose to Texas A&M and College Station. But Florida's had a lot of success against Tennessee at home. I try to find those other 2 losses, and it's difficult. So maybe they end up being a 9-3 team. And Keith, if they're a 9-3 team with this schedule, I have no doubt that they're a college football playoff team.
I said that was the last question, but now I have one more based on what you just said. I wanted to get your perspective as a player here. LSU in week 1 goes to Clemson. So they're going to be battle tested. They're going to learn what they have, what they don't have, what they need to work on. They're going to learn a lot about themselves. Florida plays Long Island the same weekend, and then USF in week 2, which, could be, that'll be a Super Bowl for USF. So that could be, it could be more difficult than maybe some people think. But does that give LSU an advantage at all that they will have been battle tested, or does it help Florida more because they will see tape of LSU against a good team? How does that work exactly?
I think yes and yes is the answer. Okay. I mean, I do think that there's an aspect of getting the team ready when you have a headline game like LSU will have at Clemson. You're going into a hostile environment there. You're really going to find out a lot about yourself, but you're also going to play what I expect to be a very physical game. How healthy do you come out of that game? On the flip side, for Florida, you are going to get to see a lot. They're not going to hide anything in that ball game in an effort to win. So you get a lot of the stuff on tape that can give you a jump on preparation. But I also like Florida's kind of stair-step schedule this year. As you mentioned, I mean, LIU is a pretty easy game where you can knock the rust off, and then you play a team that in USF that's more talented than I think people will give them credit for. Alex Golish has done a great job there. So you're kind of stepping up in competition and as you get ready for week 3, but at the same time, that's a tough environment to walk into there in the real Death Valley. So I think you can make arguments for both sides of it, but I actually really like the schedule this year for Florida, particularly because of Lagway's injuries and lost time in the offseason.
Chris, incredibly enough, and you had great success at LSU, I know, as a player. the only time I've ever been there for a game was 1993, and Florida won 58-3. So I have this real distorted opinion of Tiger Stadium. I've never gotten to see it at its best. But
I lament that too, Keith. Like I think
Yeah.
there's things that I would have liked to have experienced, and a good LSU team at Death Valley at night would have been awesome.
Yeah.
You're right. That LSU Florida game in '93 was a blowout, but '95 we went there. I think we played at like 11:30 local time. It was a morgue in that place. So really didn't get a real experience of what it's like when they have a good team.
You were probably glad you weren't there in '97. That would be my guess.
That's true. Yeah.
All right. Rapid fire with Chris Doering. We took some questions from some of our subscribers at Gators Online. Then we're going to get Chris out of here, let him enjoy the rest of his life here. Chris, I know you, man. You never liked FSU. You never liked Georgia. And when you and I grew up in Gainesville, Miami for a time was actually Florida's biggest rival, LSU big rival. But who is Chris Doering's number one UF rival? There's got to be one that you hate more than all the others.
Yeah.
Obviously, you got to be a little more impartial now in your world. But
you're right. You're right about all of those things. I think we talk about it a lot on the radio. Like, I don't know that there's anybody that has as many rivals as Florida does. I think you can name – shoot, the Tennessee jumping into the mix when we went to divisions in '92. That's one that a lot of people would probably point to. But I think it has a lot to do, the team that tormented my childhood was Georgia. I mean, those years in the 80s, whether it was Buck Belue, Lindsey Scott, or Herschel Walker, 44-0, those were nightmares for me. So when we had the success we did against Georgia, that really meant something to me. I do have a lot of respect for the Georgia program and getting a chance to be around those guys the way that I am working for the SEC on the network and on SiriusXM. It kind of changes things a little bit. I'd say the team that I probably hate the most is Florida State. But you're right. You mentioned Miami. Both of my parents are from Miami. We spent a lot of time down there, would always go to the Florida-Miami games in the Orange Bowl. And I mentioned one of the things that I lamented the most, Keith, was not playing LSU when they were good at Tiger Stadium. I never got a chance to play Miami. That really would have been, having a chance to go to the Orange Bowl and play against the Miami teams in the 90s. That would have been fun for me. So I hate Florida State, but I'm disgusted by Miami.
And there's a hate that people forget now, and that was the Auburn hate. Some unbelievable battles in the 80s, and then unfortunately for you, you suffered two of the most painful losses in Florida history against that program.
And people ask me all the time, what was my favorite stadium to go play in or the most difficult? Jordan-Hare is the most difficult. You can say what you want about Neyland, and you can say what you want about Sanford Stadium or there in Tuscaloosa, but you go to Jordan-Hare, that is a difference maker. And let's not forget Auburn this year gets Alabama and Georgia at Jordan-Hare. Odd years are usually pretty good for Auburn, at least against those two teams. So I would say Auburn's one that I'm looking forward to getting back on the Florida schedule soon.
Yeah, I agree with that. Good long-time rivals, 4.5 hours apart. All right, four more. Do you remember the name of the defensive back for Kentucky that you beat for the touchdown in '93?
Well, they played two-man, so they had a linebacker underneath. I don't remember who it was that I beat there, but I remember Melvin Johnson was one of the safeties, I believe. And then the next year we came back and we beat the hell out of Kentucky in the swamp. I think it was 70-7 or something. I caught a touchdown early in the game. But later in the game, I ran a seam down. We ran all verts, and I'm running in the seam. That against single high coverage, that's supposed to hit at about 18 to 22. Danny threw that thing at about 42. And the safety, Melvin Johnson, who went on to get drafted by the Bucs and play for them for a while, just hit me in the side of the head, completely knocked me out. It was like a movie screen going black from the top to the bottom. So, if he was out there and he was one of the ones I beat in '93, he definitely at least got a little payback in '94.
He tried to get even with you. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, what's your favorite? And again, you grew up in Gainesville. I mean, they wore the all orange when we were kids, or the orange tops. But what's your favorite home jersey combination for Florida?
I like the traditional, man. I'm a blue top, white pant guy. I don't like the blue tops and the orange pants. I think that looks kind of nasty.
Yeah.
The funny thing was, Keith, you remember how superstitious Coach Spurrier was when we went on the road. If we didn't play well in one of the combos, we'd change up. So we went a lot of white on white back in the day. I think we wore white on white in that Kentucky game. I remember some white on oranges that we wore, particularly I think at Auburn and at Georgia in '95. But yeah, I'm not a fan of like the mix and match. I like kind of sticking with the traditional.
You obviously got to play with Werfel, Shane, different guys. Any other quarterback in Florida history who you wish you could have caught passes from?
That's a good one. Kerwin was one of my heroes growing up, and got to be friends with him as things went on. I would have loved to have had a chance to play with Rex Grossman too. I think Rex is one of the most underrated quarterbacks that's ever played in Florida, and that's, I say underrated because he's probably overshadowed by three of the guys that won Heisman. But you could have made the argument that Rex deserved to win a Heisman there as well too. So I think Rex would have been a guy that I would like to have a chance to play with too.
Last thing, and we're actually over the amount of time I told you we were going to be on, so I apologize. All right, look, we know that the Swamp is going to undergo some kind of renovation soon. And you're not just a former player. Again, you bled orange and blue long before you ever played for the Gators. This is a sensitive subject to a lot of people. They want to make sure that the Swamp is preserved, as the Swamp. And a lot of fans don't want the seats to lessen the attendance. What do you hope to see out of the renovation, and what do you hope to not see out of the renovation, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's important that it retains the same sort of vibe. It's an intimidating place to play. Jacob Hester is one of my really good friends, and listening to him talk about his experience coming in and having the crowd right on top of him. So I don't want that to change. There's a lot of people that didn't want the O'Connell Center to change either, and shoot, sitting in those club seats is pretty damn nice. So I know some of the more luxury areas that they're adding is going to make it, an enhanced experience. But I'd say maybe even the most important thing for me is not on game day. It's in the days that it's not going with people filled up. I want to be able to run from the bottom to the top to run those Gator Mountains for the stadium steps that we've always been able to do.
You're right, Chris. There's a lot of schools out there that don't let you anywhere near inside their stadium during the week. And I hope Florida fans don't take that for granted. That is an incredible thing. You got people coming off the highway. They get to see the Heisman statues. They get to walk in, and that's a great advertisement for the Florida Gators football program and for the university as a whole. All right, that's it. Chris Doering, Gator Great. Thank you so much for stopping by. I will see you during the season. We hope to. I'll take you to lunch one of these days. Whatever the cheapest place in Gainesville is, that's where we're going. Chris, always great to talk to you, and we'll do it again soon. For Chris Doering, I am Keith Niebuhr. Thank you so much for stopping by.